Good evening. Today is August the 25th, Monday, and it is 9:20 p.m. in Kansas City, so we're Central Standard Time. And tonight's topic is going to be the speech Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, gave on Saturday at the party convention of the Christian Democratic Union for the state of Lower Saxony in Osnabrück, which is the western or one of the westernmost points in Lower Saxony. And that was quite interesting. Now, I've mentioned in my earlier videos that I used to be a member over at the Christian Democratic Party, and I attended them primarily in my home state in Baden-Württemberg, the different party conventions we have, because the way our party system is structured, you have a city level, county level, then a district level. There's usually 3, 4, 5 districts which make up the state, and then the federal level. And if you're lucky, you get voted in at a lower level to be a delegate, to be at the higher level party conventions, where we discuss and create the platform, basically, or the program or the agenda, whatever you may want to call it. And they make their way then through all the way to the top, to the federal level. And that becomes sort of then the overall, political agenda of the party, being put together beginning at the city level, or the smallest level is usually a city, working its way up through the counties and then districts, states, and federal. And here we had the same thing, as so the delegates from the various different counties and districts in Lower Saxony came together for their annual convention on the state level, the state convention, and there they voted for their leader, for the state leader, basically the chairman, so to speak, for the party for Lower Saxony, who also is going to be most likely the candidate to run as the governor for that state when they have the governor's election. And the highlight was they started Friday afternoon and worked their way up to Friday night, somewhere around 8:30 p.m. Then they had some, leisurely activities and dinner. And then the convention, continued Saturday morning till about noontime, 1 o'clock. And I think that was about the time when Friedrich Merz finally spoke. And since I wasn't there, I had the ability, which we didn't have back in the 80s, to actually watch the entire speech, or, party convention, actually on the YouTube channel from the Christian Democrats in Lower Saxony. And I found this to be very interesting, to actually listen to Friedrich Merz, our Chancellor, which I call Freddy. Now, for us, it is not very uncommon to have nicknames, for other party members, because we consider each other friends in the party. And so among friends, it's usually a more casual, interaction we have, regardless of whatever position the other person may have, without any disrespect. So we call him Freddy, or I call him Freddy. Now, Freddy started out, and he basically gave us the raw, unfiltered interpretation of his view of the political agenda. He thinks it's his interpretation of the party program of the Christian Democrats, the way he sees it, of in which direction the party and the country therefore should go through his government he formed. And the things he touched on are more, how should I say this? they're not very beautified, the opinions or the views. It is more like he's talking among his own people so he can speak more freely. He didn't use a teleprompter, which is uncommon. We can usually speak about our party program for 45 minutes or an hour with no problem. Usually what we do is we have a handwritten note or a typed note just about the topics we want to talk about it. And because we're so engaged in this, once you get into, that kind of activity and level within a political party, not just the Christian Democrats, but that would be for all the other parties the same thing, you kind of have this ingrained in you. It's not like you're preaching here out of the Bible or something like this, but the topics, what you want, which way this should go. We have a pretty good understanding of where we want to go, what needs to change, and that sort of stuff. And I kind of miss this because whenever you see a politician not just in Germany, but also in other countries, on television, whether it's in a talk show or it is in the news, you have a short excerpt and you hear a few things. If it is for the broad media, for the broad masses, then it's usually a sugar-coated version of this, what you actually talk about within the party itself. And this was the case here. There was no real justifications, in terms of the money to be spent. He said if his government, it was before he actually started to form his coalition, or while he was forming the coalition, was the amount of debt they had to create in order to set Germany on a new track in terms of the defense spending, the military stuff, and that sort of thing, and the large amounts of sums which are necessary to rebuild the infrastructure in Germany, which is crumbling all over the place, like in many other countries too. Our societies have grown pretty much in the last 150 years without major disruptions, except for Central Europe, from World War II, but that was now 80 years ago. So all of that is, already, rebuilt and redone. And now all of the stuff is getting old too. You're looking at 80-year-old highways in the United States. You're looking at 80-year-old highways over in Europe, roads, railroads, the canals, bridges, and all of the stuff. Anyway, I don't want to get into the detail, but this is almost in every nation has to grapple with this, except for the Chinese, because they just started building this. But in another 30, 40, 50 years, the Chinese will be in the position we're in right now, is where they have to grapple with the aging infrastructure, and they're going to run into the same issues we're running into. So this is pre-programmed. It will play itself out the same way we have to deal, or we are experiencing this. Anyway, his comment was in terms of NATO. He said prior to the agreement with the Green Party of changing the federal constitution, making a constitutional amendment, the NATO would have been pretty much a done thing, is because Germany could have not even met the 2% target, never mind 4 or 5% of what Trump was asking for. And looking at the current situation over there with Russia and the way this has been going now for 3 years, and the issues at hand, they have to deal with, that was desperately needed to get this going, basically. He also reminded the delegates at the convention that they have to do everything and anything, whatever they can and have to, in order to keep the European Union from falling apart, because that is the only thing that keeps Europe right now together. And if it should fall apart, we're going to be back into this multi-state, individual nationalism in each state, and so far and so on, which caused war after war after war over in Europe between different groups. And that was one of the things he pointed out. The other thing is what he pointed out is that the German welfare state basically is at a point of no return. Now, I have to say one thing. I've been here in the United States since 1989 and permanently since 1991. And there are programs today in place which did not exist at that time when I lived in Germany. One of them is what they call Bürgergeld, which is citizen money. And they have something like jobs, 530 or 430 euro jobs, I guess, where you can work a minimum amount of hours per week for 430 euros. And then that citizen money gives you additional, income to pay for housing and that sort of stuff. So you don't even have to work a full 40 hours and that sort of stuff. And he also Freddie made clear that all of this would have to change, that Germany should remain an industrialized nation, and that Germany should look in terms of a value system, work ethics, to Asia rather than to the United States, which doesn't come as a surprise. But of course, the Europeans are working very different than the Asians, and I just want to mention trade unions or unions versus what they have in Asia, where there is basically no unions and that sort of stuff. There's a lot of things you compare the United States and Europe are more equal or more, share more similarities than Asia with either one of the two countries because of our common background in the origins of the Industrial Revolution and the way all of this stuff unfolded. So he wants to look at this, and then he said people should work 40 hours a week. And he said the week has 168 hours or something like this, or 24 hours, 7 days a week is like 168 hours. And we would work only 40 hours. So he is now at odds, like a true capitalist trying to exploit the working masses to extrapolate their productivity out of them. And we will see on how this is going to go. He has some big plans there, but our societies have fundamentally changed. There's no question about it. And in order to get this changed into something else, it is probably not going to happen. And from what I have gathered, a lot of the German companies which used to manufacturing equipment, which was their primary export items which they had, being shipped off worldwide, and China became one of their biggest market, and then the Chinese started to basically either buy these German companies to make this. And one example would be a weaving company out there which makes weaving machines, knitting machines. They sold it to the Chinese. They kept one specialized machine. They're still making the more broader weaving machines were sent off to be made by the Chinese counterpart. Excuse me. This is just water. The Chinese basically bought them. So now they're exporting the Chinese machines to Germany, back to the original factory. And the technicians there are basically reworking the machines to be more reliable than what they are when they're made over in China. We have a similar company here in Kansas City I know of. And that fellow used to make, or would use the circuit boards for Garmin, the GPS people. And what happened now is Garmin bought that company, which used to be a contractor to them, a supplier. And they decided to have the boards made and populated in China, shipped them to Kansas City, and the company which used to make them are now reworking them. And that's basically the same strategy. This is what we're seeing more and more. So rather than actually building something, is we either assemble something from Chinese-made parts or Vietnamese or Taiwanese, Korean, wherever they come from overseas. Basically, we used to call this offshoring. From whatever offshoring company. And they're being just put together and assembled there, maybe reworked, maybe some final machining done on it, but the raw manufacturing is all done pretty much in China or Vietnam at this point. And it looks like it that Freddie, among many other politicians here in the United States and over in Europe, have not understood the difference in this. For them, it seems to be it's all the same, but it is not the same, because the manufacturing process starts with the raw materials in a most raw form once they come out of the mining process and being then refined and then further machined in a value-added system, basically, until you come up with a finished product. And this is not the case anymore. We're getting parts to a more or lesser degree of quality, and they're being either reworked or somewhat machined or just tested, quality tested, before they're shipped to their local customers. But the origin of all of this stuff is now in China. And I don't know what they want to bring back here, because a lot of this stuff cannot be brought back very easily. And Freddie's going to have the same issue. So his dream, which I would consider a dream, is of people working 40, 60, 80-hour weeks. This is not going to materialize, and especially not in the manufacturing sector, unless he is trying to basically depreciate the money, the wages in there. And here in the United States, of course, we have laws against that kind of stuff, that we're calling that prevailing wages have to be paid, is the standard sentence here, and this is no different over in Europe. You would have to fundamentally change this. This is one of these sore points capitalists, pure capitalists, usually have with our capitalist systems we have now in the United States or in Europe, whatever form of capitalism that may be. That is something they're chewing on. This is tough to digest, basically. Wall Street is the front runner there if it comes to digestive problems with that sort of thing, prevailing wages and that sort of stuff. That's why the whole circus left basically town and went to China in the first place. So he wants to get these people who get citizen money now back to work, where they actually work full-time, 40 hours a week, and I don't know what jobs. And the reason is that Germany, he says, has been in a recession for 3 years because of negative growth, to a more or less a degree, which he's probably correct. Here in the United States, we're not doing too hot here in the moment, no matter what anyone else says. Our gas prices, gasoline prices, have not come down. We are at about $3.43 I paid today for a premium unleaded, non-ethanol grade fuel. That was $3.39 when Trump took over. It went up now to 3.48 or 3.49. It was for a while, and now it's back to 3.43 today. Just that, Trump tells us that this has come down. We have not seen it in Kansas City. If it came down somewhere else in the country, it may have. But here in Kansas City, it has not come down. The prices for eggs we have been paying has come down by more than half. Other items have gone up, and they probably will still go up. So it all kind of varies. It's a mixed bag, this whole thing. But economically, the capital expenditures here are minimal. The corporate sector is holding back to see what this is going to be with the interest rates. The interest rates with the central bank here is of greater concern than the tariffs Trump has imposed, because the interest rates is what makes this whole thing move, and because we had for so many years close to 0% interest, that means the loans were 0.5%, 1% we were paying to the banks as businesses for business loans. They're now at 4, 5%, 6%. They don't want to spend that kind of money on interest, and the similar is going to be in Germany. One thing he thinks, as Freddie also said, is that he had 600 billion euros lined up there, as an investment into Germany now, with all the changes they want to make and the accelerated approval process for infrastructure projects and that sort of stuff is probably going to help him. But in a lot of ways, when I listen to these kind of segments, this is like I'm listening to a Trump speech at a MAGA rally. There was quite a few points in there. A little bit of this with the, asylum seekers and that sort of stuff, immigration related. Nothing as hardcore as what we used to from Trump with his MAGA people. But there's quite some similarities there, especially when it came to the business environment and business stimulation. The change in capital expenditures, for tax purposes and that sort of stuff, and how fast corporations can write off investments and get tax credits for it and that sort of stuff. This is pretty much what we're listening to from Trump. And it was sort of like I was listening to a Trump speech at a MAGA rally. That was probably for about 20 minutes of this whole thing. Those were the most critical points which he elaborated more at length, and I found it interesting. I have a much better understanding now on where Freddie wants to go with this stuff. Some things I may have a different opinion of, but I think the overall, direction is probably correct on how he's going to get certain items through in that coalition with the Social Democrats needs to be seen. The German people are real funny with this, is especially when it comes to these kind of entitlement programs. And we will see on how this is going to go down in the public with this Bürgergeld thing, what he wants to do there, which I don't quite understand because I'm not used to it. I've never, seen how this actually works and who gets actually how much out of this, and for whatever reason, I couldn't tell you. But that is sort of the things they want to go. I thought I'm going to put my 25 cents in here. Otherwise, I think looking at all the other candidates we had over the years, with Merkel, he definitely is very different than Merkel in a lot of ways. He brought back the old West German days, was the one republic, so to speak. And, this goes more back to the days of Helmut Kohl and Heiner Geisler and Norbert Blüm and Lothar Späth and all of those guys, you know, and Franz Josef Strauss, the Bavarian, and Theo Weigel, and those people. So he sounded in a lot of ways like they used to sound or speak back in the 80s. So for me, of course, we're, you know, about the same age. He's a little bit older than me. So he has been about 10 years longer in the party than I have. And but you can see the fundamental West German, you know, I wouldn't say ideology, but the way we used to work and operate and think, and our value system is more represented in there. So he's more West German than anything else, than German or East German or whatever new stuff we got. It's more in the core of him, in his bones, and it's not necessarily DNA, but in his bones, I would say. Anyway, before we bubble here too much, I wish you guys a wonderful night, and I will check in when we have some more interesting stuff to talk about. For that, you have a good night.